The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Thanks for coming, everybody. I wanted to just take a second to talk about some of the upcoming programs we have. If you have kids, grandkids, friends, there's something for everyone always happening here. But next month is really special because it's going to be the Queesit House's 10th anniversary as part of the library. April 11th is the actual day that we opened, but we're going to be doing a series of activities all month with lectures and crafts and a movie night, a movie made by Winter of Ames, who lived here. This might have been the bedroom. I'm not really sure. This is the biggest room up here, so I'm guessing that's what it was. One of the things we're going to be making, since it's Earth Day and we have an amazing garden outside filled with daffodils, we're going to be making these paper daffodils on our Cricut machine. I don't know if anybody's ever used one of those cutting machines. We just got one for our digital media lab. So this is just an example of one of the programs, but there are going to be many, many things. We're going to have the Master Gardener here. We're going to have someone talk about the history of Queesit House, and then we're going to have two of our former library directors here to talk about what inspired turning this house into the Learning Commons, the library. So I hope you can come back next month and check out some of the activities. And thanks for coming tonight to hear Michelle LaFavor, yeah, saying it right, talk about AI.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone being here. For those of you who don't know, I'm Michelle LaFavor, and I've spent the last 15 years with companies like Nike and Wayfair, specializing in helping leaders navigate ambiguity and make sense of emerging concepts, which is what I'm going to try to do for you today. Over the past year, I've been focused on the rapidly evolving field of large language model generative AI systems, which I call the AI assistants. Through extensive research and hands-on testing, I've developed this training, which I will share with you today. It's a comprehensive understanding of the text capabilities, applications, and the implications it can have across industries. So I'm pleased to be your guide as we explore the world of AI assistance together. My goal is to empower you with the knowledge and the strategies to safely and successfully integrate these tools into your home life. Okay, so before we dive in, I wondered if anyone realized that many of us are already using AI in our day-to-day life. So systems like voice recognition on your Siri or Alexa devices, when you're watching Netflix and you get a recommendation on what to watch next, your Waze, your route recommendations, which I personally use every single day, and even the facial recognition to open up your iPhone. So these are all powered by a type of AI. What we're going to dive into today is what's been sort of hot topic in the last year, which is generative AI. So the Deloitte AI Institute defines generative AI as a rapidly evolving branch of artificial intelligence designed to generate new content, ranging from text, code, voice, images, videos, processes. I mean, the list goes on. But put another way, AI can learn, reason, plan, and perceive. It feels a lot like talking to another human. To put that into some context, when you think about doing a Google search is going to retrieve information, right? You're going to ask it for something and it will retrieve for you, and it'll give you pages and pages of responses. What these systems are going to do is learn, reason, plan, perceive, so much more. And it's going to synthesize for you, so you're going to get a better understanding of the thing that you asked for. What I'm excited about is that this is the first time a technological revolution of this magnitude has been so widely accessible to anyone with an internet connection. I mean, you can do this on your laptop, but you can do it on your cell phone too. I mean, it's extremely wide. So let's talk about the assistants. So you'll hear different words for these things. Most people just call it ChatGPT, right? That's like calling a tissue a Kleenex. It's just a brand. It's just one of the options. They'll also be called long language models. And what that really indicates for us is that these are natural language systems, so you can talk to them in English or whatever your natural language is. You don't have to speak to it in zeros and ones like a code. So the three that I have been personally diving into most, and the ones that I like best, are Claude AI. One reason I love Claude is that its creators were really focused on safety, and it also has really large processing power. So one of the things that I'll do with Claude is I'll load large bodies of work. So for example, great example, I actually loaded this entire presentation into Claude and asked it to help me with summarizing some things for some promos. And so it was able to take the whole presentation that I have here, digest it, and come back to me with some recommendations on how I could summarize, make it really short. You can also ask it to perhaps give you a synopsis on this month's book club book. And if it's not, I mean, not that anyone doesn't read it. I know you're not just there for the wine, but that's something that it can do. It has large processing power. In a recent engagement that I had, a training, I was working with some clients that do deep research, and so they were able to load large bodies of research articles into the system and get summaries back. The next one is ChatGPT, which I think probably everyone's heard of. That's sort of the most popular. It has really unmatched language mastery, although take that with an asterisk because it seems like we're in a race now. Each week a different one of these is sort of rising to the top as the most powerful. And then we have Gemini. I've recently started using a lot with Gemini. This is fully integrated into your Google Suite. So if you have a Gmail account, then you have a Google Suite. You have access to Google Docs, which is like a Word doc. You have access to Google Sheets, which is like an Excel. All of these things. If you haven't had a chance to explore them before, I highly recommend it. But Gemini is integrated in all of it. So you can, for example, if you want to write an email, you can open up a blank email, and Gemini can come in and say, what would you like to write? Write in the email, and you tell it what you want to do, and then it will create the whole email for you right in the document of your email, and you can send right from there. No copy and pasting or anything like that. There's a lot of functionality with Gemini, and I love that it's all together in one place in your Google Suite. Oh, one other really cool thing that I'd love to mention about Gemini I learned today is that when you ask it to perform or to create contact for you, it can give it back to you in an audio format. So you can listen to its response while you read it or instead of reading it. I do this sometimes where I think about something I want to ask my AI assistants, but I'm in motion. I don't have a minute to sort of sit down and read it. You could just listen to it next time. So that was really cool. Okay, so those were our assistants. I just briefly want to touch on some of their limitations because there are some places where there could be pitfalls, but I think knowing about them is how to stay away from them. So they're truly amazing, but they aren't perfect. A few of the limitations are, to start with, knowledge cutoffs. So as I mentioned earlier, each system was trained by its creators. Most were trained from the open web from late 2022 to early 2023. You may start hearing in the news, and once you start using these, you'll get the updates that each system gets upgraded now and again. So for example, ChatGPT was just recently upgraded. So their information is now a bit newer. I don't believe any of the three that we talked about today are in 2024 yet. with the exception of Gemini, which because it's powered by Google, you can do some like back checks with Google. So it can access the open web. Just an example of this, if you ask your AI assistant for a fun event to attend tomorrow, it's not going to give you properly dated information. The next is hallucinations. You may have heard these in the news. This was sort of a big thing when Google launched its original AI, which no longer exists. Hallucinations are an instance that happens because the system does not have every bit of information. It can sometimes give up a made-up answer with a surprisingly confident tone. So to safeguard against this, when you need something to be very accurate, ask your assistant to cite its sources. So for example, the research group that I was talking about, when we asked for a specific law to be broken down for us, we asked it to cite its sources, and then we took it a step further and asked it to annotate so you could see exactly where it was picking things up from and do a double check. You're still saving yourself a ton of time in the research side of it, but doing those extra steps to ensure accuracy is really important. And then another big one that I just wanted to pull up is perpetuating bias. So because these systems were trained on the open web, there is inherent bias in the information. The way to protect ourselves against this is to specifically ask your assistant to check for bias. So again, it's just knowing it. I think for the most part in our personal lives, we're not using that in a serious way that we'd have to be super careful about bias. But in a workplace setting, it's absolutely necessary to double check. Earlier when we were doing setup, I was talking about something that I really like, which is knowing the limitations and sort of using it against or using it for your AI. So you can ask it to check its own answers for bias. You can also ask it to check you for bias. So a workplace example is writing a yearly review for somebody. You can put the whole review into your AI system and say, please check this for implicit bias. And then the last piece, which does, I think, really apply in a personal setting, is the potential to compromise shared data. The information that you share in the conversations with your AI, it doesn't necessarily disappear. Think about it, it's a web base. So there is a possibility that something could be compromised. It's a really small possibility, to be honest with you, but it's important to note that and be careful. So the stopgap there is to avoid sharing personal details in your conversations, like your home address or your license number or things like that. You wouldn't put your bank details in there. So those are a couple of the things just to watch out for as you start playing with this tech. And to help us kind of remember that, I like to go through a visualization exercise. So I'll read this to you if you'd like to close your eyes. You don't have to. Picture this. You've just hired one of these brilliant people as your personal assistant. You can choose whichever one you want. It's their first week. Well, they come highly recommended, and they're extremely impressive. You aren't going to let them compose and send emails from your account without reading them first, are you? You wouldn't give them your bank details and ask them to make some transactions for you today, right? No. This is how you should interact with your AI. Be impressed, but stay vigilant. Okay. Now we know what AI is and how to use it responsibly. Now we should talk about what we can do with this. AI assistants can benefit our personal lives in so many ways. If you think about a task that you wish you were better at, or maybe something that you really don't like doing, or something that you want to really excel at. Maybe it's starting an email. Maybe it's figuring out dinner recipes for the week based on the contents of your fridge. Maybe it's telling your kids a bedtime story. AI can help with all of that. And you don't need to be a tech whiz to use them. So a couple of the things that I posted up here I thought we could chat about, and if anyone has either something that they've done with AI before that they want to talk about, or something that you were thinking maybe AI could do for you, we could explore those things as well. But I'll just point out a few. So from a productivity standpoint, planning your meals for the week. So this is one for me that I love to do, but it's kind of a bogged down task. It typically on Sunday when I'm getting ready to go to the grocery store, I get a little huffy because I'm sick of making these meal plans every week. And then on top of that, sometimes I'm trying to stick within a certain meal plan. So for example, I'd like to make meals that my 6 and 3-year-old will eat, but also that are high in protein and low in calories for me. I put those parameters into AI. I asked for 5 breakfast, 5 lunch, and 5 dinner meals with the parameters or stipulation that I wanted it to include the 3 protein options that I had already in my fridge. And it came back with a full meal plan. You can do things like that. I was thinking of you, Lisa, actually. You can plan menus for the restaurant. So you can be really detailed about it if you want. Another one that I love to talk about in the efficiency one, this is so much fun. If you have an iPhone, you have an app called Notes. You might make your grocery lists in there. That's what I use it for. Notes does talk to text. So there's a spot there where you can click on a microphone and you can just talk away, talk, and it will record all of the words that you've said. You can, so say you have this brilliant idea that comes to you in the shower when all the good ideas come. You don't have a pen and paper, you kind of want to finish your getting ready routine, so you just open your talk to text and you spew out the whole idea that you've got. Now, take that text, copy and paste the whole thing into your favorite AI assistant. I'm going to recommend Claude here because I think it has the best language. So input it into your Claude AI and say, I would like to send this as an email out to the family so they can hear this great idea that I've just had. Please polish it up and put it in the style of Oprah Winfrey. And it will completely take all of the text, all of the information that you have, change the diction so that it sounds really good, but it's all your idea, it's everything there, and then it can pop that right into an email to send out to friends and family or whatever the situation is. It's also a great one for the car. When you're having those ideas in the car and you just don't have a minute to kind of write that down, you just talk to text and then text back into your AI. Like, so time saving and efficient. Also for, I don't know if we have a lot of helpers with homework in here, but homework and learning support, one of the things that I recently asked was around Common Core math. A little bit confusing around the way that they were asking my daughter to do something in her homework, and so I just added it into my AI and they gave me a better answer, more explanatory. Let's see, I already talked about book clubs, so we can do that. Outlining an email, maybe it's a really exciting email or maybe it's like a tough one that you really aren't sure about. It can give you that outline, it can create the whole thing for you. I would recommend then going through and kind of putting your own voice to it. And then the one that I love to tell everyone about, because I think everyone has a space for this in their life, write an original bedtime story or an original story of any kind. So I use this one frequently with my kids. I put in specifics like their names and ages and the things that they're into. And then I can ask it to do specific things. Like, I want this story to remind my kids to pick up after themselves when they're done with their toys before they go to bed. I also want this story to be in the style of Good Night Construction Site, which is a favorite in our household. And it did that. So it gave me the same sort of rhyming and cadence as that book.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Whenever I've only used ChatGPT.
Yes.
And when you ask it to respond, it's a bunch of bullet points.
Okay.
It's not in clear paragraph form.
Yeah.
Is that something that I can correct, or should I switch to a different?
You absolutely can correct that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next few slides, but what we can do is be really specific about how we want to receive the information. So we can say something like, don't give me bullet points. I'd like for this information to come in paragraph form between 500 and 700 words. And it'll give you that kind of body of work.
And it's limited to a certain amount of response per prompt, I believe. Is that, I mean, I can't get a 20,000 word essay from?
There are limitations, but they're big. They're pretty big.
Oh, because I asked it, and it said, I asked why the responses were so short, and it said that it was limited to something.
About when did you try that?
A couple months ago.
Yeah, so there's an update. There's a 3.5 that came out last month.
Okay.
So try that. But in addition, I would recommend Claude. Claude has a really large processing power, particularly around language. So I would recommend trying Claude out and seeing if you can get more out of it. Okay. Any other questions on this before we move on? This is just kind of like fun stuff we can do. I mean, in no way exhaustive. Like, this doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. There's so much more we can do, but these are some fun ones that we can start thinking about. Okay, now we get to have a brain break. So we can sort of think about what we've just covered. So we've learned about what AI is, who our assistants are, and ways to safeguard ourselves against some of the downfalls. Now that we've covered those steps, are we ready to learn how to use it? Yes. Okay, so this is a great sort of lead in from your question, the art of the prompt. So as I mentioned, you can use any language to speak to your assistant. You can talk to it like you would talk to a neighbor or a friend, but following these guidelines will help you to get the most out of your interactions. So you may have done what I did when you first, or you may do what I did when you first start using AI, which is to almost treat it like a Google query, a Google search. That's not going to give you probably the answer that you're looking for. You really want to give it a lot of context and define the task. So again, coming back to that visualization around the assistant, if you say, assistant, go get me coffee, you're gonna get something kind of maybe weird back. You might just get a cup of black coffee, you might get an iced coffee, you might get their order, like you're not giving it a lot. But if you say, go down the street to the Starbucks, not the Dunkin' Donuts, get me a caramel macchiato, should be large, should be iced, make sure that the milk is oat milk, like all these pieces, that's going to give you exactly what you're looking for, or hopefully close to it. So, oh yeah, please.
Yeah. When you're talking about the information that the AI assistant has,
Yes.
are these, and you were talking about language models, are these primarily English, or how many different languages
Great question.
do they know?
Yeah, so different models have different language capabilities. I wouldn't be able to specify who knows what at this point for you, although I do know the latest update of ChatGPT has many more languages than it did before, so you can speak to it in other languages. I also know that what I'm focusing on is the capabilities of the free versions of each of these. Every one of them has a pay-to-play version as well, and they're relatively accessible. Usually, maybe $10, $20 a month. But those ones also have more capability.
How do these guys make money at this?
That's a good question. Everybody pays to play for these. There's also a lot more out there. So for example, ChatGPT, OpenAI, is also behind a lot of other models. So how do I explain this? There's a lot of GPTs out there, so versions of ChatGPT or bots that are powered by ChatGPT that require a subscription. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of them already. There's also the enterprise models. So if you were an engineer, you could create a GPT specifically for my organization, and then I would pay a subscription for that. So there's a lot of subscription-based inflow.
You talk about, I'm sorry, I don't mean to
That's okay.
dominate, but what is the difference between the subscription-based and the free model? In other words, if I work for a bank or a firm or
Yeah,
something?
absolutely.
Why?
So a subscription base will give you more processing power. So the free versions are, you have a limited amount of back and forth that you can have with the system each day. Actually, I think it's like you get a certain body during 9 to 5, and then after work hours you get more. It's funny, it kind of resets. And then there's also how much you can load into the system, how much it will give you back. It increases as you pay to play. And also, one of the sort of distinctions that's just recently been made is the different systems, when they get their updates, it's sort of cascading. So the latest update for ChatGPT is the newest information. It's called GPT-4. That's a pay-to-play model. We're playing with GPT 3.5, which was updated like further back. So you're getting older information. So you're paying for the better quality, essentially. It's an upgrade. And then from an enterprise standpoint, so some of these bots will be created specifically for something that your enterprise needs. So for example, a chat bot might be created for Walmart, so that if I'm on the website, I can use that specific chat bot. It might be powered by ChatGPT, but the background is sort of created so that it's only going to answer questions for a Walmart customer. If that makes sense. Okay, so talking about prompting, this is how you can get the most out of your interaction with ChatGPT. So first you want to start out with the task, and you want to really state your request, clearly define the end goal. And then give it some context, so relevant details about the situation. That's where I was saying, make it a Starbucks coffee, and make sure it's a caramel macchiato with oat milk. And then you want to specify the format, so you can specify the output that you're looking for. That's where you can say the word count that you're looking for, or I want it in bullet form, or make it a poem. All of these things are part of the format that you want to give. And then lastly, you can indicate the tone for the preferred emotion or language style. What I also like here, which we were doing earlier as a demo, is asking it to adopt a specific viewpoint. So as an example, we were talking about planning a bachelorette party, and I asked the system to take the viewpoint of a full-service wedding planner. So you can sort of give it that character. You can also do something like, I want the output to be in the style of Jimmy Fallon, and it'll give it to you in a Jimmy Fallon voice, and it'll probably say things like, hey guys, or something that feels very Jimmy Fallon. The other thing that you can do here is provide examples. So in a case where it's, say for example, tone. Perhaps I wrote a fantastic email recently to my mother, and it got rave reviews. And I really feel like I want all of my emails to sound like that. I can create an email, load it to my Claude, and then load the email that I sent to mom and say, I want it to sound just like this. And it'll adopt my tone into that. But because I'm not well known in the open web for how my voice sounds, it would be harder for it to pull that into context. But if I give an example, I want it to sound just like this. So you can do that in any situation. Perhaps you're writing a blog post and you really want it to sound like something over here that sounded really good to you. You can layer those on top of each other. Any questions on how to prompt? We're going to do it in a minute, so yeah.
As you're going through this, I'm wondering, sort of sociologically, the impact of AI on loneliness, because that apparently is an increasing epidemic in this country, and I wonder if this is a way out.
Yeah, it's a possibility. That's a space where there's been some talk and some chatter around that. In fact, I was recently part of a webinar that talked about using, it's a little different from loneliness, but using AI as a workplace coach. So middle managers are having a really hard time right now with all of the weight that's put on them, all the expectations. They have to be individual contributors as well as managers, as well as sort of psychologists sometimes. And that's a space where a bot was created to act specifically only as a career coach. And so a manager can go in and say, I'm having a really hard time with this person, Raina, she's giving me a tough time, always showing up late, but I can't really talk to her about it. Like, what would you suggest? and then it'll come back in a coaching voice with 3 to 5 examples of what you could do, and then you can continue to go back and forth with that. I tried this, it didn't work out so well, can you give me another option? So yeah, I mean, that would, I think, translate pretty well into that loneliness space. It's also, you know, I didn't mention it, but it's a great sort of sounding board as well. I spoke to it earlier today, saying that I was presenting to a community group, and would you make any recommendations on specific ways to prepare for that?
You loaded these slides in,
I did.
and it commented on the slides?
Yep.
How do you do that? How do you load the slides in?
So-
Because I have a presentation coming up that I'd like to do.
Yeah, sure. So I will say, this is goes back to your question around size or pay to play versus free. With Claude, the free version can only take a 10 megabyte size file to comprehend. Luckily, this version was like 8.6, and so I just downloaded this into a PDF, and then there's an attachment which I'll show you in just a moment, and you just attach it into the system. So you won't actually see it. You'll just see the file name in the system, and we can talk about how to tell it about that. So now we'll go into demo. Bear with me, because this is the scary part. We have to exit out of here, and now we're in demo space. Perfect. Also, I'm going to attempt to do this behind my back. Can everyone see okay? It's like not the biggest. Here we go. Okay. So let's think about, before I go anywhere, this little paper clip, that's where you can attach. So you can attach up to, in the free version, you can attach up to, make 5 attachments at once, and they can be 10 megabytes each.
This is cloud, right?
This is Claude.
Okay.
Yeah. Does anyone have a use case that they would like to, or a task that they would like to maybe demo in here, so we can together create a prompt? Any brave?
Yeah, what to do in Vaduz.
What's that?
What, I was checking today what to do on vacation in Vaduz,
Oh.
Liechtenstein.
Sure. Great. If I wasn't self-conscious about spelling, I am now.
It's F-A-D-U-Z, and I have no idea about Liechtenstein.
Okay,
It's
so
not correct.
let's try this. You are a travel guide with a specialty for traveling to, say it again, F-A-D.
No, Vaduz is V-A-D-U-Z.
V-A-D-U-Z.
No, it'll know that it's in Liechtenstein.
Oh. Create an itinerary for how many days?
3.
Any specific inclusions? Maybe where to
Swimming.
eat? Sorry?
Swimming.
Swimming. Please.
I think you closed some restaurants in there, did you? Did I see that?
Few
There's
restaurants.
some restaurants in there?
Yeah, what else? What else do we need? And maybe 2 historical sites.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. It'll get what that means. Okay.
That fast.
Can everyone read it, or do you want me to read it to you?
Oh my God, that is insane.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. What I could do.
There's
Look at the restaurants, the historical sites.
They're really, no, it's a very small town.
Whoa.
So let's see.
Is there some swimming in there?
Can you all read this, or do you want me to read it to you?
Can you
I'll do a little. As a travel guide specializing in Vaduz, the capital city of Liechtenstein, I'm delighted to provide you with a 3-day itinerary that includes interesting places to swim, along with recommendations for restaurants and historical sites. So day 1, we've got start your day by exploring the charming old town of Vaduz, where you can admire the beautiful medieval architecture and stroll through the narrow streets. Visit the cathedral, a stunning neo-Renaissance church that dominates the skyline of the city. For a refreshing swim, head to Rheinpark Staden, an outdoor swimming pool complex located along the banks of the Rhine River. It offers a large pool, a children's pool, and a sunbathing area. So the next thing we can kind of do here is ask for some, like to kind of go deeper on here. So it's called Rheinpark Bar. Let's go deeper on Rhine. Please give some additional details about this site and best times to visit. So you can just kind of like keep going on and get more and more information. You don't have to take the first answer as either the best answer, or you can kind of keep going on what you've got.
That's amazing.
Wow, that's
incredible.
absolutely amazing.
Anyone else have some ways we can use this? Wow.
Scary.
Yeah,
Let's move to another platform.
I have a
Maybe
question
for
about,
instance, like, tell me a good way to prepare, ground hamburger for dinner.
Great,
There
excellent.
you go.
Okay, so
can you write that in Shakespearean English? Because I want to see something that's not bullets. No, I'm serious.
oh yes,
Yeah.
sure.
So I mean, his hamburger one's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a favorite chef?
No, I don't, but we'll just say like Julia Child.
Okay, great. Okay. In the style of Julia Child. Give me a recipe for ground beef.
Yes, and ask it for like a citation, like for a source where it got that recipe, and maybe that would give us a clue as to whether it's a reputable source or not.
Let's see what happens first with this, and then we'll move to Shakespearean English.
Ground beef, versatile.
Yes.
Grandma would have loved this one.
They didn't ask for how I changed the number helper.
So if you didn't catch that, because I asked for the style of Julia Child, ground beef, a versatile ingredient that can be transformed. I've got a little Irish there. Into myriad delicious dishes. Today I'll share with you a classic recipe for beef bourguignon à ma façon. Beef bourguignon, my way. Inspired by the legendary Julia Child. So it sounds just like,
This is
how she
yeah.
would speak. Yes.
Adapted from Mastering the Art.
Yep, and it's got the source there.
Yeah.
And okay, let's see. Let's try another one where we can get something that's not bullets.
Bon appetit.
Now, how do you think if you put that same question into the different AI sources?
Yeah, you might get something
What-
a little bit
yeah,
different.
how
So you want to
think
do
it would
that?
look?
Let's go to Gemini. And ask it the very same thing. And keep me honest here. In the style of Julia Child, give me a recipe for ground beef. Did I ask for anything else?
And
Cite
cite
source.
source.
And cite your source.
In the English,
Oh,
Not
you
both.
put
I
it-
didn't do it yet. This
Okay.
was the
That's recipe, so.
Um, Oh, yeah.
Let's see what we get. Yeah, so
So it is a little different.
it's gonna come.
Oh, it came in French?
Yeah, this is, well, not the whole thing, but it definitely like picks up a different way.
And it's a different meal.
Yeah, which is also cool. So you can sort of, yeah.
It's nice to see that they weren't.
Now let's
Oh my God, stop.
I just asked it to switch around a bit and give us a rhyme for the opening here. Attention, mes amis, lend me an ear for a recipe that's both simple and dear. We'll craft a French classic, a bistro delight, beef tech hot. I'm not.
Whatever.
Close to right. Inspired by Julia, a legend in the kitchen, these ground beef patties will flavors will glisten. Perfect for weeknights, a casual affair, so grab your ingredients. With joy, let's prepare.
That's cool. Oh my God.
Wow.
Your friends in the kitchen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another use case I like here is you can tell it, like I mentioned before, here are the 3 proteins we already have defrosted in the fridge. Plus I have an avocado, a tomato, and mozzarella cheese. And in my cupboard I have chickpeas and flour. And then ask it to create a couple of recipes based off of those ingredients. So kind of a way to use up what you already have, or maybe your husband went to the store and came back with, who knows what, now what are we gonna make? So different ways that you can kind of play around with that. Yes.
How does, without looking for a deep technical answer here,
Good, I probably won't get any more.
how does it reason so quickly?
Yeah.
Where does the data come from?
Yeah, so these are trained on the entire web from a certain body of time. So, and again, they're changing so frequently that I don't have track of each one now, but most are late 2022 to early 2023 is sort of the cutoff of when they, basically from that moment prior. So I know Claude is April of 2023. Everything before that, that's what it's trained on. So it has all of that information inside of its proverbial brain, and immense processing power to move it super quickly and synthesize. It also, these ones are specifically trained as language models, so they're trained on how to respond or answer a question, versus there's like tons of other generative AI out there that are not specifically trained to respond to something. So that, asking a question in that way wouldn't get you that answer. These ones are specifically trained to do that, if that makes sense. So my non-technical answer.
Can it handle certain like simple search engine type questions, like you just asked, what time does Borderland State Park close tomorrow?
Yeah, great question. So it can handle a question like that. I'll say 2 things. One, it's not the best use of your AI. I would say you're better off using a Google search for that, because these are trained on old information. You're gonna get the Borderland State Park hours from 2022. So if they've changed, then you're getting old information.
Mhm.
Yeah, these are much more exciting to use with sort of a long prompt, give it a lot of background, give it a lot of context, so it can really give you something robust back. Yeah. Anyone? That's all I have for us. Unless anybody wants to play around with a little bit more or have any other questions. Yeah.
Do you know anything about stable diffusion?
No, nothing. Would you like me to ask?
Well, it's just that's another AI program, but it's specifically for generating images.
Ah, yes.
Rather than asking questions about, advice and recipes and such.
Yes, and the more that is sort of happening right now. These are getting more and more integrated with one another. I played around a little bit with DALL-E, but I didn't find it quite to the level that I wanted it to be at yet. But I would say probably in our very, very near future, the language models and the visual models will start to overlap more so that you can more easily make creations.
I have to write a 20,000 word chapter
Okay.
applying this is how boring my life is, applying utilitarian ethical principles to Medicare for All.
Okay.
How far can this, how much can this help me? Can it write the whole thing?
I would say,
Please.
Because I would charge more for it.
yeah, I would say that you could use AI. You could use AI to write the whole thing. It would. I mean, it's coming from your brain, right? So you're going to probably pull that out into sections, and then within those sections, yeah, you can absolutely create.
Section by section.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you just tell it. Do you want to play? Let's see. Tell me again. What are we doing? 20,000?
Yeah, 20,000 words.
Let's see. Let's take it from a personal point of view. I am writing a 20,000 word document, manual, chapter on. Tell me again.
Applying utilitarian ethics to Medicare for All.
Can you help me outline the chapter? And
You're fine.
okay, so I've just asked it for an outline to just help you plan. So, who's talking to us? Gemini is telling us you can start with an introduction to briefly explain Medicare and Medicare for All proposals. Section 2 could be potential benefits of Medicare for All, applying the principle of utility. I've asked it for some spaces where you can visit for more information to help you generate ideas around this. Next, it's telling you to make a section on potential challenges of Medicare for All, considering potential negative impacts. Again, we have some links that you can pop into for more information. And then balancing benefits and challenges, a utilitarian calculus, and then finally a conclusion.
But you gotta remember about the dates too, you know.
Yeah, so great point.
You know.
In this example, because we're using Gemini, these are, like, this is the only place where you're gonna find links, like from one of these AIs. So it's cool because Gemini is powered by Google, so they like integrate with one another. Usually there's a,
So that might be more up to date then.
yes, yeah, it will be. And then we can also double check the response with Google. So it will do a live search, and it's now evaluating the statements that we got.
That's cool.
So interesting though, it takes so much longer when you're using the Google part.
So why would,
Yeah, so it's good.
why would any high school or college student ever do any homework?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting conversation that's being had now. And I think from my personal point of view, is that there's some teachers in the room. I think the way that we ask students to use their brains will change. I think from an assignment standpoint, assigning certain work to students, I think will start shifting, so that there can be applications for AI, but also spaces where you can really measure how much cognitive work is being done by a student. One example that I don't think is perfect but very interesting is for a teacher to ask a student to create a prompt based on a problem and use that prompt with their AI.
Yeah, that's true.
And then to bring the result into class and either personally edit in class or talk about how the AI failed or was wrong, or sort of like what I was talking about before with the biases, kind of knowing it, understanding the pitfall, and then using it back on itself to kind of turn it around, get a 180 out of it. But I do think that the current state that we're in makes it a little bit difficult, because students, as they continue to evolve and get better at using these systems, can manipulate them in a way that really forces or really encourages using them, and makes it a little bit hard to kind of stop and think about it all on your own. I will say this, without having a really great prompt or kind of a long dialogue back and forth, what you will get from these systems, as I think a teacher could identify as not your work.
Yeah.
You have to kind of really go back and forth with the system, and I can say from personal use, by the time you've gone back and forth enough to get something that sounds good, you've got it. Like, you're putting a fair amount of work into it. So it's still saving you time, it's still adding, but
So how does citation work when the line between plagiarism and,
yeah,
a resource is now so thin?
yeah.
And, will teachers or people who are evaluating someone's creative content have to, put that content through, its own AI just
Yeah.
to see like how much is yours and how much did you just pull off
Right.
the internet?
Absolutely, great question. I go back to the example of when I was in high school, we were learning how to cite sources, cite books, and we were told explicitly you cannot use anything that you search on the internet because nobody knows where that came from. It's not verified. It's not something that is appropriate to cite in a research paper or whatever. Within about a year, we were then learning how to cite websites because now suddenly they are acceptable. And I think we're kind of in that moment right now with AI, where we don't really know how to cite it. We're sort of like, don't use it because we don't really know how accurate it can be or how much it's you and how much it's them. I think we're sort of headed toward that direction of here's how to cite a website. Here's how to, I think we're heading there. It's just a little bit fuzzy right now. One thing that I do recommend, though, when I speak to organizations, is to be transparent about when and how you're using AI. So I speak with a lot of HR professionals, and one thing that I say is, yeah, absolutely, use it for your yearly review, because there's a lot of greatness that you can get out of that. Like, you can check it for bias, you can help to make sure that you're really getting your message across the right way, but make sure your people know that. I'm going to use whichever AI I'm using to help make sure that these reviews are the best that they can be, versus sort of pretending that it didn't happen, and then people are a little bit like, did you actually write this? I don't know. But just being transparent about it. That's my take.
I heard a college professor talk about how this is the new reality and whether to not put a value on it, it's a tool and students are going to use it, and the expectations of what you can do are going to be higher.
Yes.
Because now, you can use this tool to really expand your references and your viewpoints, and it's really easy, and you don't have to go to the library, and it's right there on your computer.
Yeah.
So the expectation has to be higher.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. That's where I think the whole learning style is going to change, but the expectations are growing with it. Yeah, for sure. There's a great quote that I use sometimes with these presentations that is, one barrel of oil is measured as 20,000 man-hours of labor. And this quote says that AI is to cognitive labor what oil is to manual labor. So we're just exponentially 20,000 hours ahead, now that we're applying this.
Better ways to learn how to use it.
Right?
My
So
meal,
then you're all
my meal
happy
planning
again.
needs work bad.
And you started laughing, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.